On November the 9th and 10th, that's Saturday and Sunday 2024, I fully intend to exhibit at this year's Cambridge Retro Computer Festival being held at the Centre for Computing History, Cambridge, England. For my theme and setup for this year's show, I want to launch a new series here on Wi-Fi Sheep called Going GUI. The plan is to set up a series of retro and emulated retro computer systems documenting some of the interesting graphical user interfaces or GUIs that existed for a plethora of retro hardware. And in today's video we're going to look at an operating system called GEOS or GEOS, Graphical Environment Operating System, which came out in 1986 for the Commodore 64. Now, shock horror, I don't actually own a Commodore 64. Well, not a real one anyway, but what I do have is this. So here on the desk is the C64. This came out from Retro Games Limited. So these came out around 2019, and the C64, what we call it, is known as the C64 Maxi unofficially. It came out after Retro Games Limited released their mini system. Now, I covered both extensively here on the channel at the time. So it looks the part, it is scaled to size, but underneath it's very different. It's effectively an ARM emulator box. It runs an ARM All-Winner Cortex chip and it's USB based. It's got USB on the side. I am a little bit cramped for space, as you can see, trying to get everything in frame, so I hope you can excuse the slightly weird shot going on, but why we're kind of very wide angle and all the mess and all the cables that are associated with trying to gear everything up ready for a video. Anyway, what I'm going to do today in this video is we're going to get GEOS to run here on the C64. Now, many of you have commented that you've actually tried and failed to get GEOS to run properly on the C64 or the C64 Mini. And I looked into this and I think I have a solution of a few things you need to do to get the OS to actually run on your system. So before we do anything else, first thing we need is a USB data stick, and I've got one here. So this will eventually plug into the USB on the back of the C64, but for now we're just going to put it into my PC, which is also doing recording, by the way, so it's just off camera over here. And then we're going to head over to a website called my64.in.nf. Here it is, and it's I Still Adore My C64 and 128. And there's a link down here. First of all, there's the C64 64 Mini, and underneath there's actually GEOS. Under here you'll see a series of links, including this link here, which is GEOS or GEOS for the C64. And as you can see, it's a zip containing disk images, and all you need to get it working. So we're just going to click and download that at the moment, and that will create a zip. Excuse all the junk on the system. We need to extract this, and we will extract to the flash drive. Now, I already have a GEOS set up, so what I shall do is I'll create a new folder, and we'll just say GEOS. I'll say new. I'll select that folder and we'll extract. And inside it'll create a folder called GEOS, and in there you'll have GEOS apps, GeoFile, and also this disk image. Now, a lot of the time people attempt to run GEOS on the C64 and it doesn't work, and you might get as far as a sort of black and white or checkerboard screen. The reason is you actually need to add some attributes to the file name. Now, they've already been included. So you've got GEOS64, then it's underscore J1, which signifies which joystick port. So it's joystick port 1, and then AD, I forget, advanced disk or advanced loader or something. I forget exactly what AD is, but I do know you have to have J1 and an AD, then the .d64 file. So that's your main operating system file, and it should be as simple as that. So we can actually eject this disk now, or I should say eject this pen drive. Okay, so let's take the drive out of there, and let's put this into, I always put this in the back of the C64. Now, to make life a bit easier, I've already plugged in this fake Nintendo USB and SNES style game controller, just so I can navigate the menus a bit easier. You can do it on the keyboard. I can't, after 5 years, I can't remember the commands to do it, so we'll just do it with this. It's a bit easier. You could use the joystick that comes with it. I just never like the joystick, so I tend not to use them. I've also got cheap USB mouse for the moment, so that's plugged in. Now, things to note. I've had difficulty getting this to work properly if you don't plug everything in before you turn on the system. If you turn on the system and then plug stuff in, it tends not to see USB or see data sticks. So plug everything off before we start. Now, with a bit of luck, I'm going to turn on the system and switch to capture, and hopefully you should see the system boot up. Okay, that's fantastic. So I've set mine to boot on the default Commodore boot screen. By default, I think these actually go to the carousel game mode for the inbuilt games. I've just set mine to boot up as a C64 by default. Now, one thing you do need to make sure that you are actually running the correct firmware. So if I just, using the game controller here, just go to Options, Device Settings, and System Information, it should give us the build there. So I'm running the C64 and it's build 1.61. I have to stress, you need to be running version 1.61 or later. The reason is that 1.61 added mouse support along with a few other things to the C64, and also the C64 Mini, by the way. It's the same firmware for both. I believe the VIC-20 clone will do this as well, so you can actually do this if you have a VIC-20, but you need to run that firmware. So if you have an earlier version of that, you'll need to update the firmware before you can continue, so that's fine. Okay, so with the USB stick here in the back of the C64, I now want to select the disk image that we want to boot. So we go back to Media Access and GEOS New, and we select the file there. You'll notice the file name, it just comes up as GEOS64, but the actual drive access has it as J1AD, as you can see there on the disk drive. So that's absolutely fine, that's what we want. So that's been selected, so we go back. Now, good old-fashioned Commodore load command now. Load, quote, oops, star or asterisk, quote, comma 8, comma 1. Okay, this will take a little bit of time, just to make you aware, because the C64 also emulates the slow nature of disk access on the original hardware. So it sort of sits there and it appears like it's not doing much of anything. So you just have to be patient and give it a moment. There we go. So this is the checkerboard screen where most people get to and then get stuck. But hopefully, with a little bit of luck, we shall see a desktop. And we've got a cursor there in the top of the screen. So by default, the cursor, which is in the very top corner now in this blue cursor, very top corner, won't move even with mouse input. And I can show that here. I've just got the mouse and we won't get anything to work. So what we need to do is, on the Commodore keyboard, we need to hold down the Commodore key, or in this case the C64 key, and we go I for interface. So it's Commodore I for interface, and you'll see it brings up a system and it asks what you want to communicate with. So it's joystick or communications port 1351. I don't know why there's a duplicate of 1351, such as the A variant. I'm not sure what that is. Now, what you can do is you can actually use the cursor keys on the keyboard, and you hold down Shift. You can go the other way. The Commodore system, for those of you that don't know, this is a little frustrating. The Commodore system only has 2 cursor keys, so the up and down and left and right are jeweled up. So by basically, that's down, holding Shift and pressing it, that's back, and same with left and right. So just bear that in mind. But you can use the cursor keys if you don't have any pointing devices or mice to actually control the GEOS operating system. So if I now go Shift, and there we are. So I want to now bring the cursor, oops, roughly over to comms, press enter. There we go, okay. Now with a little bit of luck, yes, there we go. And I must say it is really smooth, the pointing action. That's now running with the cheap mouse I've got here, and I'm actually controlling the cursor on the screen. So that's absolutely brilliant. So this is GEOS, which is one of the very few native 6502 based graphic user operating systems for any platform. A lot of them tended to be 16-bit for the x86 Intel PC, or they tended to run on the Z80. The 6502 did not have a huge number of native operating systems that were graphical based. So this is quite nice to see. As you can see, it looks very kind of Mac-esque. It doesn't quite work the same way as you would expect for Mac. So for example, this window here is fixed. It doesn't move. It is fixed to the screen. And even if you close it, it just redraws this blank window space until you reopen the drive and it reloads off the virtual floppy disk. We then have this little tab here, so we can click and we can see all the things on the system, including the control panels, joysticks, that kind of thing. Nothing on page 3, let's go back to page 1. So we've also got things like the Color Manager. I will say this operating system is a little bit slow to get things going. There we go. So you can actually set up colours, because otherwise it defaults to this kind of grey or off grey. So we can sort of set colours, save, exit. There you go. You see, then I've just adjusted the colours so it makes the window space a little bit more vibrant. So you can actually do custom setups and change the colour setup. So all the 16 colours of C64 are actually available within this operating system environment. Now, one thing we can do is actually change the disks to get some software running. So remember that we've still got the emulator layer or the front layer of the C64 running underneath. So we can go to media. Oops, let's go back again. Media access. Here's new. We've got apps here. And we want to load that file up, or that disk image. Now we close this window and we open back up. We've now put in the applications disk. We've got GeoWrite, GeoPaint, and we've got Notepad. But you can see how Notepad defaults back to this very grey and dull interface, and also you'll notice the window is not resizable or draggable on this operating system. So although it creates a kind of overlapping window type system, they're not as flexible or behave in a way you'd expect from a Mac or even an early Windows system. But it does work, so hopefully the keyboard works. So we can say G going GUI. We won't go into too many apps today, but let's have a look at GeoPaint, because I know you'll be dying to look at GeoPaint. When I'm at the exhibition, I'm probably, if we're not going to run games, then we're probably going to be running the paint programs, as they're the most sort of click and point interactive thing you can do with these early graphical user interfaces. So this is GeoPaint, and let's create a new document. Let's call this Wi-Fi sheet. Nope, not used to keyboard layout. Wi-Fi sheet test. Okay, make a return. And paintbrush mode normal. Ooh. Okay, it's not click and drag, it's click and click to deselect, so I've messed that up. I'm going to try and draw our logo, which is going to be terrible. Sort of, can we have a slightly smaller brush? We can. I don't think I can do this freehand. Sort of something a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah, I am not sure about quite why it sticks like that, but you get you get the idea. Oh dear, that's quite bad. But you get the gist with that and how that might work. Okay, so hopefully if you can follow along and go to the link to the website in the description, that should work for you. Now, the legality of downloading and using GEOS, it's kind of abandonware. It hasn't been developed since the late 80s. Don't confuse it with the 16-bit version of GEOS, which is used for IBM PC x86 compatibles. I think that's still legally protected at the moment. Technically speaking, 8-bit GEOS is still someone's copyright, but it was released open source a few years ago. A lot of the websites that you download from sort of say, oh, please only download here if you have the original documentation, or this kind of thing. I'm going to leave that down to your personal judgment if you want to follow that rules. No one is making any money out of this. In fact, only recently, someone has actually ported it over to the Atari 400 and 800 8-bit systems. So it's already having some community development, and it's an interesting footnote in history, especially for that of the 6502. Now, my system here is going to go on exhibition at the Centre for Computer History in Cambridge. This particular unit has been once before, so it'll be a return visit, but this time running the GEOS operating system. And obviously it's going to be on show, so I want it to kind of look the part. As my whole theme is click and point GUIs, that means obviously controlling with a mouse. Now, any, or more or less, any USB mouse, bar maybe some of the Apple product ones, will work with this system. But as the C64 looks the part as an original 8-bit machine, the mouse does not look the part. So again, purely because I want to exhibit, I thought maybe I need to rectify that. So I actually went and bought one of these. This is the mouse, which is also from Retro Games Limited, and it's initially meant for the A500. That's their Amiga Mini system, which we didn't really cover here on the channel because I didn't really rate it as a product I was interested in. Now, the Amiga Mini did come with this sort of copy of the classic Amiga Tank mouse, as well as a control gamepad. However, Retro Games Limited sold these separately. They work on, basically it's just USB mouse, so they work on Windows, Mac and Linux. I paid about £21 for this, so it's still a bit overpriced for a mouse, but being it sort of the same heritage as this product, and they're both meant to be copies or clones of Commodore products, I thought it was fitting, and hopefully this will work really well with the C64 and will look the part, especially when we go on shows. So just need to find a knife to get rid of some tape. Okay, so you should be able to just open it up. Oh, upside down. And there we are. So apparently, now I'm not an Amiga person, so I'm just taking other people's word for this. Apparently, this version of the mouse is slightly under scale. It's meant to be for tank mouse for the Amiga, but apparently it's a little bit on the small side. It's also laser. It's not a ball mouse like the original, but it's a little bit lighter in colour, but it does sort of match, I think anyway, the C64 Commodore system. So we'll take out the mouse I was using, so let's just take that out and we'll plug in the new mouse, which actually has a good bit of weight to it, and you can see it is actually working. So I might need to get a mouse pad. Don't know how well this is going to work on the desk, but let's just put a mouse down. So, okay, yeah. Buttons feel quite nice. Got a nice click to it. Much better than the cheap mouse I was using there a minute ago. If we just go back to the capture, you can see that's now with the mouse. And yeah, that actually works really, really well. Don't know, can we clear the screen? I've really messed this up. I can bring up. There you are, there's some info about the version. So they're 85 to 88. GEOS Paint. And I think we can. Oops. Quit. That should take us back to the applications desktop. Indeed it does, there we go. So yeah, I need to do a little bit of setup with the colour because it's annoying. But I have to say, overall, really do like this new tank mouse. Wasn't going to pay much more than £20 for one. It's still a little overpriced of what it is. By the way, the light you can see flickering from it, I can't see that. That's infrared or ultraviolet, whatever, whichever one it is, but I can't see that in person. It's just the camera doesn't filter it, so it picks it up. Hence why there's a slight purple hue on everything at the moment. It's just the camera doesn't filter infrared light out. So, but yeah, that's looking really good actually. And don't these two just really look the part now? I think that was my worry, was if you put something like a more modern mouse in, it just doesn't look quite right. Whereas we're having something like this, just, you know, it helps enormously. It gives it the part and it tells the story. And I think the two, both from Retro Games Limited and both obviously from Commodore heritage, do actually work really well and look the part together. So if you want to try it out for yourself, it's all there in the links to the description, and it will run on the Vice emulator on a real C64 or here on the C64 Maxi or Mini systems, as I'll be running for this year's Retro Computer Festival in Cambridge. So really quick final word about this year's Retro Computer Festival 2024 in Cambridge. It's Saturday the 9th, Sunday the 10th of November 2024. I plan to be there exhibiting with my Going GUI content, which is going to be retro and vintage type systems running all kinds of graphical user point-and-click interfaces from the past sort of 40 odd years of computing history, with myself along with many other fantastic exhibitors and contributors. So it's going to be a really great weekend, really looking forward to it, but it will be busy and it will be oversubscribed. So If you're planning on visiting, now is the time to buy your tickets. Please, please, please do purchase a ticket at computinghistory.org.uk. If you don't, there's no guarantee you'll be let in on the door. If the building gets oversubscribed and full, especially on the Saturday, there's no guarantee you'd actually be able to be allowed in. So please, please do book tickets ahead of time. Details are all there on the website, and it would be absolutely fantastic to see you in person later this year. Right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's certainly been great fun to get this up and running, and best of luck if you're going to try this for yourself. Do look out for new content right here on Wi-Fi Ship, including more videos in my new Going GUI series. We have many different classic computer systems and retro operating systems to look at and get working ahead of that crucial November the 9th, November the 10th deadline. So I hope you'll join me for that. If you're brand new around here, haven't done so already, please do consider liking and subscribing. Do stay with this video, as all the fantastic YouTube and Patreon backers are about to appear on your screen right now. A huge thank you to them all. Details will also be on your screen, and I hope to see you real soon right here on the channel. Until next time, bye for now.